As humanity inches closer to becoming a multi-planetary species, a fundamental question emerges: should countries be allowed to claim land on other planets? This issue combines law, ethics, geopolitics, history, economics, and the future of space exploration. It challenges us to rethink what ownership means beyond Earth. At the heart of this debate lies the 1967 Outer Space Treaty. Signed by over 100 countries, including major space powers like the United States, Russia, and China, the treaty is the cornerstone of international space law. It states that outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, is the province of all humankind. It prohibits any nation from claiming sovereignty over extraterrestrial territory. The treaty promotes exploration for the benefit of all nations, not just those with advanced space programs. Despite its noble intent, the treaty was written during the Cold War, long before private spaceflight, lunar bases, or interplanetary mining became realistic possibilities. As private companies and national agencies develop technologies for long-term settlement, resource extraction, and even colonization, the legal framework appears increasingly outdated. Some argue that allowing land claims could encourage investment and development. If countries or corporations could legally own extraterrestrial land, they might be more willing to invest in infrastructure, science, and innovation. Ownership could provide a framework for property rights, trade, taxation, and even governance. Proponents believe that regulated claims could prevent conflict by establishing clear boundaries and expectations. In their view, land claims could provide economic incentives for nations and companies to commit to long-term exploration goals. The establishment of property rights might be the catalyst for a booming off-world economy, similar to how the concept of private ownership spurred industrial development on Earth. However, opponents warn that land claims could reignite colonialist dynamics. History shows that territorial expansion often leads to conflict, inequality, and exploitation. Permitting nations to claim land might result in space being dominated by wealthy countries or powerful corporations. This could marginalize developing nations and create a new space-based class system. Some fear that allowing land claims would contradict the spirit of international cooperation. Space exploration has often served as a unifying force, a symbol of what humanity can achieve together when it reaches for the stars. National territorial claims could fracture this unity. Instead of collaboration, we might see disputes, militarization, and competition for planetary resources. Another layer to the debate involves private enterprises. The rise of companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and others has shifted the conversation dramatically. While the Outer Space Treaty limits national claims, it says little about corporate rights. New laws, like the U.S. Commercial Space Launch Competitiveness Act of 2015, grant companies the right to own resources they extract in space. This raises complex legal and ethical questions about how ownership can exist without sovereignty. Should companies be allowed to claim areas for mining or settlement if they don't own the land itself? What happens when multiple actors want access to the same crater, valley, or water source? Would there be a global bidding process? Would conflicts be resolved by international courts, or would power and presence dictate outcomes? Legal scholars suggest that future treaties may need to create a planetary zoning system. This could allocate areas for science, habitation, commerce, and environmental preservation. Such a framework might resemble international agreements on the Antarctic or the deep sea. In these regions, no country can claim sovereignty, but activities are regulated cooperatively. Alternatively, an interplanetary agency could be established to oversee claims, mediate disputes, and enforce rules. Such an agency would need broad international support, transparency, and legal authority. It could serve as a centralized body for licensing land use and resource extraction. Enforcement would be a major challenge. On Earth, we rely on borders, courts, treaties, and military deterrence. On another planet, who would enforce property laws? What penalties would exist for violations, and who would impose them? Would Earth-based courts have jurisdiction, or would new legal frameworks be created on-site? Could space settlements establish their own autonomous governments? These questions remain unresolved. Some propose a more philosophical approach. They argue that humanity should view other planets as shared sacred trusts. Rather than carving them into national territories, we should protect and preserve them for future generations. This view prioritizes sustainability, research, and long-term human flourishing over immediate economic gain. It also reflects the idea that exploration should be guided by ethics and stewardship, not conquest. Others believe a hybrid model may be most practical. Nations and companies could lease plots for limited use, with strict conditions on environmental impact and collaboration. Such a system could encourage innovation without sacrificing equity or ethics. The leased land would revert to collective oversight once the lease expires, preserving communal access. Some have suggested rotating planetary custodianship, where different international consortia manage areas for set timeframes. Ultimately, the question of land claims is not just legal but deeply moral. Do we replicate Earth's history of division and conquest, repeating cycles of inequality in a new frontier? Or do we imagine new ways to share and steward the cosmos together? As we dream of settlements on the Moon, Mars, and even moons like Europa or Titan, these decisions cannot be deferred. They must be debated and codified before a land rush begins. We must ask, what kind of civilization do we want to build among the stars? Should countries be allowed to claim land on other planets? For now, international law says no, but the future may demand a more nuanced answer. We stand at a crossroads between the past and the possible. And as we look to Mars, the Moon, and beyond, we must decide not only how we explore, but who gets to call it home, and on what terms. It's not just about property lines in alien soil, it's about the soul of spacefaring humanity.